So here we are at Madmash. We just started up our brewing system. So we got our panel here. And this is the spot where we control all of the things going on over there with the brewing system. So right here we have this motor speed that controls how quickly or slowly the paddles are stirring the grains in the beer. This is turning on and off the stir motor. This is the temperature of the what's called the mash tun, where we steep the grains in hot water, and you'll see it's currently increasing in temperature. It's at 84 degrees now. Its target is to go up to 155, and so that's the first part of the process. We get the water up to temperature. We're stirring the water with the grains in it, although right now we're just doing a test with straight water before we actually get to doing brewing. So that's where that's at. And you can see at the top here, this is how many amps this system's pulling, trying to get the temperature up. So it's going to remain around 87, 88 amps throughout the process of increasing the temperature there until it gets to 155. Then it goes back pretty much down to zero. Then over here, this is Chad. He's one of the founders. Hang on. He's one of the founders of the Madmash Brewing Company. So you can see here, we've got this big vessel here. That's called the mash tun. That's where we start the brewing process. We put water in there. And then once the water gets up to a certain level, we'll drop grains into this bin. And then those grains will steep in the water. The water is at 155 degrees on or about. And that will extract the sugars from the grains. And those grains, or that sugar, creates that caramel colored water that is called wort. So that takes about an hour of circulating water, and you'll see the water goes in here with the grains, then it comes out of this big vessel, and it goes in with those valves right there, comes into this vessel, and this is called a grant. And then from the grant, it goes out these lines here with that valve there turned on into the pump. The pump pumps it up and around, and it comes up through this red hose all the way around, and then it comes back into the beer, and then we sprinkle the water over the top of the grain. So that way we get more sugar conversion from the grains, because we're circulating the water through the grains, and that helps with better conversion, so we get a stronger beer and a better tasting beer. So right now we're just filling it with water. We're running the process with water so we can have a test before we actually start putting grains to this system. So once we've got this whole process done over here with the mashing, that takes about an hour, and the beer becomes a nice caramelly color. What we end up doing is we'll turn off this valve here so that it stops sprinkling it back into that system. And then we come over here and we'll turn on these two valves here. So we're basically going to transfer all of the liquid from that barrel over to these two barrels. And then those two barrels are called the boil kettles. So what happens is once those grains are done steeping, we need to boil the wort for an hour, and that's when we add hops at different stages. So depending on the beer, you may add hops at different stages of that boiling process, and that will extract the flavors from the hops in a different way, giving you a different style of beer. And so while that is going on, again, we're circulating the beer. So or the wort rather. So those two valves being on at the top, and then these valves at the bottom that come out of the bottom of these two vessels will be turned on. So what will happen is the wort will come out of these two vessels, travel along this tube, and then down here we turn off this valve here, and then that wort will come in back into this vessel here, or back into the pump, and I'll pump up. We turn off this valve, and then it goes right back around, and it will circulate into the system. And because these, you'll see these entries into the vessels are going in on an angle, what's going to happen is it's going to create a whirlpool. So it's going to be constantly stirring that wort in two opposite directions, creating a whirlpool. So it will, when we put the hops in, it will circulate that water and extract those flavors as well. And then when that's all said and done, we'll hook up the system to these connectors here. So we'll put this connector on this spot here. We'll put the other connector. We have to disconnect some valves or some connections. But we connect this in here, where that is. And then what that will do, we have to turn the system off and the pump off. And when that happens, what we end up doing is we circulate the beer then through this device here. So you'll see this device, a big long device. It has a bunch of plates in it. And you'll see we have wort on one side and water on the other side. Traditional cooling methods use water, and now that uses town water, and so basically you're taking the hot wort through and you're transferring the heat from the wort into the water, but that's a very inefficient method. So we've actually acquired one of these. So this thing is called a wort or a glycol chiller. So this thing gets filled up with glycol, and we connect this return to the water out side, and we connect this supply right here, this supply, and that goes onto this side here of the chiller, and then that will circulate glycol. So this thing's essentially like an air conditioner that will cool the beer faster, and we don't use up a whole lot of water just running it straight through that system. So, and glycol, propylene glycol, is a food safe product. So, but those are two closed sides, so never should wort get into glycol or glycol into wort. So, but that will cool the beer, and we need to cool it as fast as we can so we don't introduce foreign elements into the beer before it goes to the fermentation process. So after that's all said and done, we pump all that wort into one of those fermentation vessels, or one of the many that we have downstairs. So that's the process in a nutshell. Looking forward to continuing to make beer, starting to make beer and continuing to make beer for Tavistock area.